I visited a aquatic fish farmer and I noticed something very sad in her fish pond. I have a conversation with her and I believe I should share that with you so we all learn together. I went to the farm to fix recirculating aquatic system which will filter the fish pond's water. And when I got there and I started work, then later I checked in the fish pond. Because when I got there I didn't check. And I saw a lot of feet, leftover feet, floating on the surface of the fish pond. So when I inquired, she told me that she fed them, and when they are fed and anything happens to them or you stress them, then they bring back the feet or they vomit it back. And that is true because catfish has a tendency of vomiting back the feet. Unfortunately, that incident was overfeeding. I mentioned that to her even though she didn't want to agree first, because she told me she has been measuring and that amount of fish and their size at the pond at that time, they were taking 2 kilograms of feed, and that's what she measures every day to give them. And for that matter, that is the exact amount of feed they were supposed to take. And is that really the case? Yes, you may have or you may be measuring the feed for your fish and you give them, and they might be taking that same quantity of feed every day or every time. But the reality is that there are times you will give them that same amount of feed and it will be considered as overfeeding. And there are times that you will give them even higher or the same quantity and it will not be considered as overfeeding. You might be confused. I will explain that to you, or I'll break that down to you for your understanding. Fish do not have the same appetite at the same time. There are times that their appetite is lower, and for that matter, when you give them feed, they eat lesser. And there are times that their appetite is higher, and for that matter, when you give them more, they take more. So those times that their appetite is lower, when you give them that same quantity of feed that you have been giving them, it might be considered as overfeeding because they might not eat everything. And there are conditions that led to the lower appetite. Such include higher temperature or lower temperature, that's temperature fluctuation. If the temperature is higher, their appetite is lower. And when the appetite is also lower, it probably also be that the temperature is lower. I have another video on that where I fed them during hot afternoon and I fed them during cool time and I fed them during normal time, and you could see their reactions towards each period. You may check that one out in other videos. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, do so and navigate through the videos. You will see that and then you can watch it. I will also leave the link in the description. You can check that one out. Now, so if that's the case, and that time their appetite is lower and you give them that same amount of feed that you have been giving them, despite the fact that you have been measuring or you measure it, it might be considered as overfeeding because they may take it and vomit it back, or they might not even take it at all. But the point is, why am I even bothered much to talk about the mistake of that feeding, or it was a mistake? The issue is that when they are overfed or when they vomited back, it has water issues. It reduces the water quality in the fish pond, therefore decreasing the oxygen level, which may lead to diseases and mortality, which you as a fish farmer you will want to avoid. So having the right method or way of feeding your fish is very important so that you will avoid the issue of overfeeding. Now, how do you feed them so that you will not be able to overfeed them, or you'll not be able to give them more than necessary. Yes, that is the point we want to talk about now. Like I mentioned, you may have the same amount of feed that you are giving. For instance, even my fish farm, this is the cup I'm using to feed the fish, and I have a standard number of cups I give the fish, and as they are growing, I'm increasing. But that standard number of cups is not fixed. There are days they will take lesser, and there are days they will take more. Like I said earlier, you will be measuring. However, don't be a robot. Try to be striking the balance. So how do you determine, or how do you do that? You do that by determining the appetite of the fish. If they have higher appetite, you give them more. If they have lower appetite, then you give them less. Otherwise, you will have issues of overfeeding. And to do that, you need to do what we call responsive feeding method. And in the responsive feeding method, you give them small at a time and observe how the fish react to the feed. When they react vigorously and they are energetic and they have higher appetite, it means that they are ready to consume more feed. Then you keep giving them until you notice that their appetite or their reaction to the feed is lesser. Then you can stop, or you can stop giving them. That is how to determine whether they have higher appetite or not. So when you give them small and they are strong enough and they are rushing, you give them more. And when you give them and you notice that they are not that energetic, or they are not even minding the feed, that means stop giving them and check there is something wrong. Either there's a weather fluctuation, like I mentioned earlier, extreme weather, either too cold or too hot, or there's disease, or there's something wrong with the fish. Stop feeding them and try to find out what is the problem. But if you don't do that, and then because you have standard measure of giving a fish, you just decided that, oh, I've been giving them 2 kilograms. Then you measure your 2 kilograms and come and pour into the fish pond. This is dangerous, because when you pour in there and they do not eat everything, what happens to the leftover? Or when they eat and they vomit it back, what happens to the feed? It dissolves in the oxygen, it dissolves in the water, reducing the oxygen level and increasing ammonia, and such will lead to diseases and mortality, which you will want to avoid. Now, having said this, and I hope you have learned, I will not just leave there. I'm going to feed the fish practically, and you see how they are reacting. And you also see the kind of method that I have mentioned. That's the responsive feeding method. I've given them small at a time, then you observe and you see how they react to it. And then anytime you're going to feed your fish, you can also relate or do that same method. So please watch out how I'm feeding the fish. And if you have not subscribed, I beg you, do so.